In 1866 and later in 1887, the Baron Ebury and Duke of Westminster and others leased land to the Metropolitan Railway Company for 1,000 years. In 1885, a pair of railway lines were pushed through from Harrow to Pinner, reaching northward in 1886 and finally arrived at Rickmansworth in 1887. To get here, they had to build bridges, the largest being this sharply skewed one over the A404 in Northwood and numbered MR60. By 1930, the Metropolitan Railway Company had pushed 2 pairs of lines through as far as Harrow, but the company were forcibly taken over by the London Passenger Transport Board in 1933, and they took over the plans for driving a second pair of lines from Harrow to Rickmansworth. But the brick bridge over the A404 was too small, so in 1938 they designed a 3-section skewed bridge to replace it. World War II then intervened, and the 3 sections were then laid up in a siding just outside Northwood Station. And in 1961, the second pair of lines started to be pushed through from Harrow to Northwood. Sadly, the old brick bridge had to be demolished, and the local inhabitants were horrified to see it replaced with a monstrous, rusty, 25-year-old steel girder bridge. Although the road was widened and the bridge finally painted a pale blue, it did little to appease local feeling, as it soared above the tree line and was considered an eyesore for miles around. After 50 years of atmospheric damage to the bridge, it was in need of renovation. In May 2011, traffic management was set up and a birdcage of scaffolding was then erected with 2-metre-high landings totally covering not only the 3 huge sides and the top, but underneath as well. At night they were able to hang sheets of plastic about 15 feet wide over the scaffolding in order to stop any of the rust, dirt or paint falling on trains and cars. This is the material that they used. It's called Shrinkwrapped, and it's a special industrial grade of polyethylene, and they used it gradually to cover the whole of the structure, and once in position they then heat treated it and literally shrink wrapped the whole of the bridge structure. This was extremely important because the paint manufacturers had actually laid down very careful limits for temperature and humidity while they were spraying. I met Carl Novis, the site manager, and he told me about the equipment they were using to provide the very high air and pump pressures needed for their paint spraying, and to provide lighting which is needed for overnight working. Initially, the whole structure had to be rotary jet washed at 2000 psi to remove dirt and flaking paint. Then areas of bad rust and scale were removed by needle gunning, and then finally power wire brushed to prepare the steel for the application of a primer. The potman has the job of keeping these containers full of paint, and these high pressure pumps force the paint up these lines at 5,000 pounds per square inch to the sprayer working on the bridge above. They used over 6,500 litres of a 3-coat epoxy-based paint, and spraying was completed by the beginning of November. This gives you some idea of the complexity of the scaffold construction and the plastic covering necessary to maintain the temperature and humidity required. And it also gives you a good idea of the immense size of this bridge. and from this air vent a unique view of autumn in a part of Old Northwood. Traffic management worked well, with the odd hiccup when unusual vehicles had to pass under the bridge. With the painting completed, the next job was to remove the Shrinkwrapped, and it was necessary, of course, again to shut the road for overnight working. First to be removed were the centre sections of the plastic and then the two ends, all done most efficiently. With the last trains through and the power switched off, work started at 1:30 AM and went on through the night until 5 AM. In gentle drizzling rain, the plastic was cut into manageable chunks and dragged down to a skip, ready to be removed for recycling. With the plastic covering off, the next thing was to remove all the scaffolding. With the help of a very tall crane, this huge 100-foot crossbeam was removed. It had connected the roof structure across the front of the 3 bridge sections. Once down, riggers swiftly dismantled it into smaller frames for removal by lorry. Dismantling continued steadily over the next few nights, fortunately still in good weather conditions. Finally, at the beginning of December, the scaffolding was all removed and the road cleared of obstructions, and the bridge was revealed in all its finery. Over the past 50 years, it has now become partially hidden as the trees have grown up. It used to be known as the Ugly Iron Bridge. So now, it's a freshly painted Ugly Iron Bridge.
Do you want to...
That'll do.
Yeah, they would. Apart from the wind.
In 1961, when I first filmed this, local residents were horrified at this enormous 150-foot long iron bridge that was put up. And I just wondered whether there is what the local feeling is now.
You have to remember that bridge has been there for over 50 years now.
Yeah.
So anyone under the age of 50 wouldn't really remember the other bridge.
Yes, true.
So it's there as a part of the scenery.
Mm-hmm.
And do we like it? I think it's rather a splendid bridge. It's a good old-fashioned iron bridge that is a memory of the old iron steam rail.
Now that all the work is finished, how do you think the contractors coped with traffic management?
I think they did a splendid job, and I think they set a good example to all the other utility companies. They started on time and they finished on time. In fact, I think they finished a week or two before the designated time. They managed the traffic very well, and they left no mess one day.
What about a question of safety with all that, all the obstacles in the way?
I think, again, that was managed very well too. In fact, we discussed this at our Residents Association committee the other evening, and we felt the road was safer with just the one carriageway carrying 2 lanes of traffic than the 2 lanes each side. Speed was curtailed and people took a lot more care when driving through there. So I would really rather like to keep that traffic management still.
Well, Tony, thank you very much for your comments anyway.
My pleasure.
So, what do you think? Icon or eyesore? You'll just have to take your pick.